The ancient Egyptian language belongs to a wide family of languages spread across Sahara, Africa, and Western Asia. This Afro-Asiatic language group includes languages still spoken today in North Africa, Berber and Chadic, and the Near East, Arabic and Hebrew. But the ancient Egyptian language is today a dead language. Hieroglyphs took shape in about 3000 BC and reached canonical form at the start of the Old Kingdom. The word hieroglyph comes from the Greek word hieros, which means sacred.
This is Rosetta Stone, which you may know that Champollion used it to decode the hieroglyphs. But Champollion wasn't the first one who tried to decode the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. The whole story of the decoding of the ancient Egyptian language in this video. But before we start, please don't forget to subscribe and like and share. I'm Mohamed Khairy. Welcome to Eye of Mystery Egypt.
Welcome back. In the year of 394 AD, saw the carving of the last known dated hieroglyphic text on the island of Phila. When the land converted to the new faith of Christianity in the 3rd century AD, Egypt lost both use and knowledge of the hieroglyphic. For the new faith, the pagan scripts were banned, and the Greek alphabet was adapted to the Egyptian language, forming new scripts known as Coptic. Also, for 1,000 years, Egyptians have spoken Arabic in the wake of the Arab conquest of 642 AD. The first step to decoding the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic and cursive Egyptian text come in the mid-17th century when Father Athanasius Kircher proposed that the Coptic language used in the church services in Egypt could be the same language as that spoken and written by the ancient Egyptians. The recognition of Coptic as the last stage of the Egyptian language formed the first breakthrough. He also published in 1762 the correct deduction that the only prominent punctuating mark in Egyptian text, that the oval, sometimes used to include signs, was a device to highlight names of kings or divinities. In 1797, the scientific and military expedition launched by Napoleon Bonaparte to conquer Egypt. The expedition met with military disaster when the British joined Ottoman Turkey to drive out the French army in 1801. The academic side of the expedition brought more productive results, among which may be counted the science of Egyptology. As a first consul of revolutionary France, Bonaparte included in his forces a large team of scholars who were to draw up accurate maps and record the land as well as its Islamic and ancient monuments. Despite the capitulation of the military, the scholars were able to keep their papers and could thus produce an astonishing series of texts and blade volumes still used by Egyptologists. The Description de l'Egypte, the Description of Egypt, publication of those volumes in 1809 to 1830, and also the popular account by the expeditionary Vivian Denin, Travels in Upper Egypt in 1802, brought Egypt with unprecedented accuracy into the heart of Europe. In July 1799, an officer in the French expedition, Berry Bouchard, received orders to restore the medieval fortress at Rashid, which known as Rosetta, as part from the defenses against the British and Turkish reconquest of Egypt. Bouchard or his men come across a great granodiorite slab inscribed in 3 scripts: hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek. Since the expedition included a scientific wing with the mission to collect antiquities, Bouchard sent his stone to his superior, General Menou, who in turn informed scholars at the new French Institute of Egypt installed in Cairo. Originally, the stone presented the accomplishments of the boy king Ptolemy V and the decree to establish his cult as god in all Egyptian temples, as passed by the Egyptian priestess when they met at Memphis in 196 BC for a coronation in Egyptian style. It would have been a round topped still, but once it was broken, it was used as a building block, probably when the medieval fortress was built at Rashid by Qaitbay in the Islamic period. Only the Greek text could be read, but its line revealed what might have been expected, that the same text was recorded on the stela in a secret native and Greek letters. This raised hopes that the lost hieroglyphic and demotic scripts could be deciphered by comparing those renderings of the text with the known Greek version of the monument, which was moved to the French Institute in Cairo and soon became known as the Rosetta Stone. When the French withdrew from Cairo in June 1801, they brought the stone with their other papers to Alexandria. In 8 September 1801, Mino was forced to capitulate, signing away by Article 14 of the Treaty of Alexandria. Over a dozen major antiquities included the Rosetta Stone. King George III of England presented the finds in 1802 to the British Museum. Since that year, the stone has been displayed in the Egyptian galleries of the collection. The year 1802 also saw the first published attempts at decipherment from the stone possible, because both the French and the British custodians of the monuments had clearly copied the inscriptions, and copies had been sent to all the major scholarly institutions of Europe. Antonio Isaac Sylvestre de Sacy, a French Orientalist, laid down guidelines from method to decipher demotic from the Greek by locating the names in the text. Deducing from the names could then be used to discover the sound value of other words, isolated by comparison with the parallel Greek text. In 1802, both de Sacy and the Swedish diplomat Johan David Åkerblad presented many readings of signs. Some of these were correct, but mostly were still false. They confined their efforts to demotic partly because the demotic part of the Rosetta Stone is preserved intact, whereas the hieroglyphic text is severely damaged. The Rosetta Stone lacking much of the first half of the text. Perhaps more seriously, the hieroglyphs were considered to be mysterious symbols, whereas the demotic were regarded as less obscure scripts for daily work, and so more susceptible to decoding. The next 2 decades saw firmer progress in deciphering demotic by the English physicist Thomas Young. Young wrote an account of hieroglyphic and demotic scripts for Encyclopaedia Britannica in 1819, in which he made use of the Rosetta Stone and new material coming out of Egypt in the aftermath of the French expedition, in particular demotic papyri. Among his principal achievements, Young confirmed that demotic was a cursive script derived from hieroglyphs, established correct phonetic volumes from several hieroglyphic signs by comparing them with the Greek writing of Ptolemy, and recognized that demotic and the Macedonian names Ptolemy, isolated in hieroglyphs in cartouches, use not one but 2 principles of writing. Young did not believe that hieroglyphs in general could include sound signs. He continued to insist that Egyptian hieroglyphs were in general signs symbols without alphabetic or phonetic volume, and that they were used to represent sound only when they had to convey foreign names, such as Ptolemy and Cleopatra, much as signs in the Chinese script can represent single sound only when writing European names. Even when in 1822 he had deciphered the hieroglyphic writing of Cleopatra from an obelisk now in Kingston Lacy, Dorset, Young could not read a single word of Egyptian hieroglyphic text. The breakthrough in deciphering hieroglyphs come not when the names Cleopatra and Ptolemy could be read, but when Egyptian pharaonic names and Egyptian words could be read. This happened for the first time in 1822, when the French scholar Jean-François Champollion read to Paris Academy his famous letter. You will find it in the sources of this episode. A lecture in which extending the reading of hieroglyphs beyond foreign names to all hieroglyphs and beyond the Greco-Roman period into the earlier ages of Pharaonic history. Champollion had wrestled with hieroglyphic decipherment since his childhood and tended to turn from one method to another and from one point of view to another, at one time embracing the view that hieroglyphs could be alphabetic, then returning to the view that they were secret symbols. In 1822, he saw copies of text from Egyptian temples in Nubia, with the cartouches or royal names, reigns of Thutmose III and Ramses II. Aware of the possible meaning of the names from Coptic and of the fame of Thutmose and Ramses in work of ancient Greek authors, Champollion became the first man in 14 centuries to recognize the dual principle behind the Egyptian hieroglyphic script in the specific writing of those two royal names. The name Ramses illustrates most clearly the dual principle. Ra means sun in the Coptic, and in the cartouche, Champollion recognized the sun disk, clearly representing the sense or idea sun, with the sound value Ra in Egyptian. The sign at the end of the cartouche was used to write the letter S in the name Ptolemy, Greek form in full Ptolemaios, on the Rosetta Stone, and so Champollion could read Ra S. He was then able to guess that the middle sign should read M, and he had then the name Ramses, which he could explain from his knowledge of Coptic. In the year of 1824, Champollion published his precise hieroglyphic system, in which he laid out not only the script, but also using Coptic, the grammar of ancient Egyptian. Much remained to be done, and after his death in 1832, his work was continued by the German scholar Karl Richard Lebesius, who removed one error in 1837. Despite such important refinements, the system of Champollion had already opened the door to reading hieroglyphic and hieratic text. When Champollion finally visited Egypt in 1828 to 1830, the sites and monuments seen and copied by so many travelers over the previous 2 decades were legible to him for the first time in centuries, and what had previously been a confused mass of Egyptian antiquities could be correctly dated into a chronological sequence. Thank you for watching my video. Please don't forget to have a look to the sources before you go. And if you like my video, please subscribe and like and share. You will find me on YouTube and Facebook by the same name, Eye of Mystery Egypt.